Hello everybody and welcome to today's live stream. Sorry about the delay. I had to restart my computer. So a little hang up there, but we're here. Short week for us here in the US. We got a holiday coming up on Thursday and Friday. So we're excited to be here for this live stream. Let me check really quickly any of the comments. Oh, hey, Ron, how you doing? Ted, how you guys doing? Ice Cream 62. Welcome, everybody. Again, sorry for the delay. Technical difficulty. All right. So how do you like my banner right behind me here? It's pretty cool, huh? All right. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be talking a little bit about probing. And I've got a part here that I made. I don't know if you could see it, how it shows up here. So when you have a part similar to this, you would do your first operation, you would do your machining, and then you have this on the bottom, and then later on you flip it over in a soft jaws and just hold it on here, then you machine all of that. But sometimes what happens is when you squeeze that thing in the vise, you get a little bit of deflection, or so if you're looking at it this way, if you're squeezing on the vise and it's pushing on the part, you sometimes get a little bit of deflection in your assembly. Not a whole lot, but enough to make a difference on your part and accuracy. So what we can do is midstream. So in the program, when we're machining, let me get a pencil here. One thing we can do is after we machine this top part off, then, so let me get the orientation properly. So then what we can do, after we machine and we expose this hole, we could then come in and reference off that bore with our probe. So we can, again, like I said, you expose this hole and all of the work on this side is done and this hole is done. So all of this stuff is perfectly in the right spot, very accurate. And then when you flip it, this hole is still there. And all of these features we want to be relative to this. So what I did is I drew let me back up a second. So what we can do is in midstream we can come in there, probe it, and carry on and make sure that everything is right. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So let me switch screens here. And because I rebooted, I lost whatever files I had open. So let me switch screen. And let me hide that component color toggling there. Okay, so let's turn that on. So if you remember on the last live stream I did was some soft jaws, and this is a similar part. Let me hide some of these jaws here. So this is a perfect scenario where we could use that strategy. So let's say if you have this feature here and it's a counter bore and it's very accurate, and on the other side you also have that same counter bore. Well, how do you machine that if you were to flip it and guarantee that it's concentric? So this could be like a link, and what if there's a bearing in there or a bushing of some sort? So one strategy we use is we can come and machine everything and obviously do the first operation, and then when we flip it over, we would machine off the material off of this face, and it would expose this through hole that was done from the bottom. And then we can probe this feature here. We can probe this feature and then carry on and make sure that that bore is concentric to this bore. So I did, if we come in here to manufacture, I did a little workflow here. And let me come in here and just kind of make things visible. So we've got our operation 1. And we've got our steel jaws. These are some parallels. These are steel jaws in our vise. And we've got our stock. So there's the stock you can kind of see in that highlighted preview. And then let me generate all of this. We face that. We do some adaptive to clear that material. Do a finish contour on the outside. Finish contour of that inner bore. And then also these counterbores. And then chamfer to deburr everything. And then what you're left with, we can simulate this now. Let me show the stock. And I'm going to make this just material for now. And on the mode, I like to show tail. And let's simulate that. We could even hide the part so we can see just the stock. So then there's our part, and then we've got this counterbore there and a through hole. So how do we ensure that when we flip it over, and let me hide this assembly and show these guys here. So when you're holding it this way and you machine this off the top, how do you ensure that those counterbores are going to be in the right spot? So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you guys one workflow. It is not the only workflow that you can do in Fusion. There's many ways to get from point A to point B, and this is just one of many ways to get there. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to switch over to the new design. Actually, before I do that, let me take a quick peek at the comments, see if there's anything in there. Oh yeah, and also, Aaron, if you want to post a link for Fusion Academy, don't forget everybody, Fusion Academy, Fusion Academy is going to be a cool event, August 5th and 6th and 7th, and that's going to be in Portland, Oregon, and we will all be there, and Aaron will be there, Brad will be there, Jason will be there, I'll be there, and the whole Fusion crew will be there. So it'll be a fun event. You should definitely make it. All right, so let's just, what I'm going to do, let me do this. I'm going to save as, and I'm just going to rename this so I don't mess with my original. I got a huge delay. I was hitting backspace. All right, let's do that. So now we've got a brand new part, and what I'm going to do here is delete. So let me clean this up a little bit so we're looking at a clean slate. So I'm going to delete that setup. I'm going to delete this setup. And what we want to show is the first operation and the part. So we're not going to get into like how I did all these assemblies. That's going to be in a future live stream. Kind of covered that last week, on the last live stream I did on creating the soft jaws. So let me go here to design, and of course, because I showed things here and hid things and unhiding things, it all depends on if you're in the manufacturer workspace or the design workspace. We can turn off this just so you get a kind of idea, but I'm going to leave it on so you guys can distinguish easily what is what. So this is going to be our part, and then these are jaws, and then these are parallels where the stock sits on. And I've got the stock right there. And the stock is transparent. So let's go ahead and start creating some toolpath. And and show you guys how we did that. Taking a look at the comments really quick. All right, so if you remember, we come in here in the design, in Fusion in the top left where we have design. We want to come in here under manufacture. And the manufacture workspace is where we do all of our machining. There's also other goodies we can do in there, but I'm just going to do the machining for now. So again, like I said, we've got our jaws and we've got our stock. This is our stock and our part in there. So let's go ahead and create a setup. And in the setup, what we want to do is define our workpiece, define the stock, define the origin. And as you can see, when I did a setup, Fusion automatically recognized everything in my assembly and threw some stock around there. But one easy way I can get around that is just here, go under model. And model is what are you cutting? What are you machining? So I can come in here and I can press, click, and hold to pick through that stock. And I'm going to pick that. So again, I'm going to X out of that. And we've got all of this here. There's that stock, that rectangular stock. How do I pick through that? You click and you hold. And then as you move and hover your mouse, it's going to start picking things up that was behind your cursor of your mouse. So that's my part that I want to machine. So I'm going to do that and click that. The next thing, I'm going to jump over here to the stock. And by default, Fusion's doing a relative size box, which is leaving 40 thousandths of an inch on the sides, 40 thousandths on the top. I'm just going to come into here, and because I modeled my stock, I'm going to go here from solid. And now I need to select the stock. So where is that? That is my Op1 assembly, and there's my stock. So now you can see Fusion is identifying the stock that we'll be machining away to create this part. Again, if I cancel out of that, I come in here into my browser and I just navigate to the Op1 assembly and I have my stock in there. And I hit OK. Oh, actually, let me come back here. I want to touch on a few things here. On the here, under the origin, this is where you set in your 0. So you can do model box point, or you can do stock box point. And what that does, it projects like a rectangle, and it creates these dots at the end points and at the midpoint of all of these entities. So you can say you want your X0, Y0, Z0 here on this corner. You can pick this corner. This is of the stock. And again, like I said, you can also do of the model. And I'm not going to choose model because I am going to pick off the stock. So I'm going to do stock box point, and I'm going to pick the center. And the reason why I'm picking center is I'm going to be able to probe this and pick that stock. And I'm going to hit Z, the Z face, to come down with my probe here and hit the top of that. And if you guys don't know what a probe is, let me, if I could minimize this, and I can drag something into this screen. So earlier I was showing that part that I made last week at Haas. We did a Train the Nation tour, Machine Like a Pro. We made this part. So there's a probe in the machine spindle, and these are the parts. This is a 5-axis machine. The table is obviously tilted and rotated. But that is a probe, and that's a Ruby stylus. And this stylus is very similar to CMM. So this stylus has radial deflection and axial deflection. So the machine spindle will come down and make contact with the part and take some measurements, and you can set your work offset. You can measure the bore diameter. You can measure feature to feature. There's all kinds of cool things you can do with the probe. So that's what it is. That's a spindle probe. So I wanted to show you guys what that is. All right, coming back over here. So just going back through here, making sure everything is set right. I like to do, on my orientation, I like to do Z and X depending on what I'm doing. And in this case, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to set Z normal to that. It's already there, but I'm going to show you how I do that. So Z is this face. And then once I select that face, it jumps over, Fusion jumps over to X and is requesting or needing some information. What is the x-axis normal to? So I'm going to say that face. And nothing really changed because it was already, the model was already in the right orientation. But if it wasn't, like you see this view cube over here where the Z and X are, sometimes when you have a large assembly or if the model was imported or whatnot or brought in a different orientation. So this is where you set your orientation of your WCS, work coordinate system. So everything looks good here, guys. I got that set. I've got my body, and again, I've got my stock, post-process. I'm just going to tell it program number 1, and I'll just do op1 live stream. And we've got another feature up here called NC program. We're not going to have time to get into that, so I'm just going to keep it simple here. And like I've talked about in previous live streams, we've got your WCS offset. Your machine can have different offsets, so you can do 1, 2, 3. So 1 would be G54, 0 is also G54, 2 would be G55, and so on. Okay, so that all looks good. I'm going to hit OK. And now we've defined, let me close some of this just to clean up my screen a bit. So now what we've done, we've defined our stock, the origin of the stock, and we've defined our model. One thing I could have done in this setup is defined this, the jaws. Actually, I'm going to do that. Let me, here under fixture, and under fixture I can just click this here, this, and that parallel. So when I do the simulation, it's going to show that in the simulation. It'll give you a nice representation of what we're doing. So I'll hit OK. Very first thing I want to do is I want to face the top of the stock. So we've got our 2D toolpaths here. I'm going to select face. Very first thing we want to do, we've got all these tabs over here. We need to select the tool. What tool are we going to face with? So I can come down here. I've got all these sample libraries. I'm going to do, come down to this one, inch aluminum, and I can sort by type. I'm going to look for face mill and hit OK. And looks like I don't have anything in there, but I know I have one down in here. And as soon as I click that, I'm filtering by the face mill. And yes, I do have a 2-inch face mill. There's a preview of my tool, and I'm going to hit OK. So Fusion brings in the preview of the tool. Speeds and feeds are brought in from the tool. You can adjust those here. If you want to adjust your coolant, you've got all these options here on the first tab under Tool. The next tab is Geometry, like what are you cutting? And I didn't select anything, but Fusion automatically detected this yellow rectangle, and that is the stock that we defined in our setup over here. So Fusion's intelligent. It already knows where the stock is, and in the setup, if you remember, we defined that model body. So I don't really have to do anything there, and by default, everything is correct here also. If I look at it from the front, it says the bottom height is the model top, which is that dark blue line, the top of the model. The top height is a stock top, which is that light blue color. And then the retract and clearance, that's where the tool is rapiding to and positioning. And if it's moving around, where it's retracting to in Z. So all you really need to do is select the tool, select the facing operation, select your tool, and hit OK. So Fusion's going to come in and machine that face. I'm not crazy about how that looked there, so let's do this. Let's select a different tool. I'm gonna come into my tool. I've got a 3-inch face mill. Let's do this one and watch what it does now. It's just gonna come in right down the center. I like that. That looks good. And we're only taking 50 thousandths off the top, so we can do that in one shot. If you want to do that in multiple passes, you would come under here. You'd right-click your operation, and under passes, you would do multiple depths. So this is your maximum step down. I can say take 100 thousandths of an inch maximum, and then for the finishing, take 0.005. I can even slow down the feed rate to something like that, 500 inches per minute, and hit OK. So if I zoom in, you could see now it's taken 2 passes. So there's that first pass, 5 thousandths above, and then the second pass. All right, let me take a look here at the comments, see if there's any questions or anything. Looks like Aaron's covering that well. Maybe we could talk about G-code sometime. I'd love to talk about G-code sometime, Ron. And Ice Creams 62. Hey, did you guys, whoever won the bottle openers, did you guys receive those in the mail? All right. They did, yes. Aaron says they did. Awesome. Cool, guys. All right. And one thing on that bottle opener, let me switch over here. One thing on that bottle opener, I thought I had one here. It's very narrow. So when you're trying to open the lip, it's peeling it, whereas a traditional bottle opener is a lot wider, so it grabs around a larger radius. So when it lifts up, it does it in one shot. So ours was narrow because the spark plug, so you have to get it in a couple of bites, but it works very well. We've tried it. Works out great. All right, getting back to the part we have on screen. Hey Blaze, I see your comment. It might be nice to look at the new NC program feature. Use it for the first time on your last project. And it can be very useful. Yes, I agree. I'm going to do a video on that, and we'll be posting that here shortly on how to utilize NC program. It does work great, but I'm afraid we won't have enough time to cover that today. But I'll do a video, and we'll post it to the Fusion 360 channel soon. All right, so moving right along, we've got that face. We need to machine around the outside and rough those bores out. A few ways to do that. I'm just going to come in here under 3D, Adaptive Clearing. I'm going to select a tool, and I have this 3/8 of an inch flat end mill, and I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to select that, and then we don't need rest machining turned on. Stock contours though, remember what I just said earlier for the facing? Fusion recognizes where the stock is, so if you had larger stock, it would put that yellow rectangle around a lot larger boundary, and it would know where the stock boundary is. Under heights, so the default here is model bottom. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say take the tool down to the depth of this, the top of that jaw, but raise it up. Let's do 50 thousandths above that. Let me come here and let's see. Will that work? Yeah, let me rotate around to this side view. So we've got our, so this is the jaw, and these are the parallels. This is the stock. And oh, I still have this selected, so every time I'm clicking, it's selecting things. But so let's cancel that out, and I want to make sure that I select that face, view it from this side, and my tool will go to this dark blue line, so it will be 50 thousandths above the jaw, which is this. So my tool will go right to there. That looks good. I like that. And then stock to leave, we want to turn that on. I want to leave 20 thousandths on all the walls radially, and 20 thousandths on all the floors axially. I'll OK that. And Fusion will now rough out the outside and finish the inside. Not finish the inside, rough the inside, because I told it stock to leave. So that looks good so far. Let me do a quick simulation. I'm going to right click here, go to simulate, just so you guys can see where we're at. And there's that finish pass, and then roughing around the outside. That looks good. And there it's entering the hole. Speed this up a little bit more. All right. Left a little bit more material there than I was hoping, but I can make some adjustments in the passes tab. I can come to that in a moment. What I'm going to do next, guys, we want to finish around the outside of that. And let me come into here under 2D contour. And I'm just going to select this edge. And under the heights, remember what we did previously? So by default, Fusion is going to the selected contour, which is that bottom edge there. I'm going to go to selection again and say go to the top of that jaw, but stay 50 thousandths above that. And there we got a toolpath. And we cut around the outside. That looks good. Let me take a quick look at the comments. How can I set up a manual work position for the stock? I want to nail the stock to an MDF board and use a work coordinate 0, 0 on the MDF position. Duke Dynamics, are you talking about here? This WCS? Oh, looks like Aaron answered it already. Are you modeling all this in Fusion if there's face edge? Yeah, looks like Aaron got it. Okay. I'll stay on track, guys. Okay. Cancel that. So now what I need to do, I need to finish this inner bore. Let me turn that stock off. Just so it's not there, so when I click and I hover over. So now we want to finish this inner bore and this wall, and we'll also finish that floor. And remember I said on the adaptive it left a little much on the fine step down. So I can do flat area detection, and let's hit OK. And so yeah, oh, we're machining over. Actually, I don't want to do that, guys, because we already faced it. So we'll turn that guy, and then the fine step down, let's do something like this. 30 thousandths, and that's actually more like a step up. And that should get us a little closer to that bottom face. And over here, so one way to avoid one thing here, stock top. I need to change that to model top. That was the default behavior, going to stock top. I want to go to model top, and it's already been machined. It's already been faced. So Fusion was looking at the stock top, and there was 50 thousandths of material to remove. That's why I was doing that. So now I changed that to model top with an offset of 0. Now we won't be wasting time cutting that top face. There we go. Okay, so now we faced it, we roughed the outside, and we do a contour finish on the outside. Now we want to finish these inner bores. I can use that same 2D contour operation. I'll come into here, 2D contour. I'll hit this one, and this one. We'll hit those bores. Actually, I'm going to change the order of that. I want to hit this bore on the inside and this bore on the inside. I'm going to do that first. And on the heights tab, I'm going to, instead of going to the selected contour, which I selected that bottom edge, I'm going to go to the model bottom and go beyond the bottom by 30 thousandths. So now when I look at this view here, it's going to go to that dark blue line. If I were to go to selected contour, the dark blue line is up inside here, right there. But I don't want it. I want it to go to the model bottom so that when I reach from the other side with my probe, I can hit that. All right, so I'm going to go model bottom. I'm going to verify stock to leave is off. There's some things I can turn on here. I can do wear compensation. That's for cutter compensation to determine if there's any wear on your tool. So you can adjust the size of that bore properly. So you can turn that on. I'm going to hit OK. And now we've got we're machining that inner bore there, this wall, and this wall. So next I want to hit this wall and this floor. So one thing I can do, I could duplicate that. And now I got an exact duplicate of that prior one, and I can edit. And here under geometry, I will reselect the chains to here and here. And on the heights, if you remember previously, I was going to, oops, clicked wrong. I was going to the model bottom. Now I do want to go to selected contour with an offset of 0. So I want to go with my tool to that face, to that depth, cutting that wall. A couple other things I'm going to do. I'm going to remove on the linking tab the vertical lead-in radius and hit OK. All right, so now the tool is going to plunge here, machine around that, lift up, retract, come over and machine that. So that looks good so far. Let's do a quick simulation. I'll right click here. So as this is cutting, I see Ron commented the heights is one of the things Ron has trouble with. Okay. So the heights, let me go to that really quick, Ron. I'll talk about that for a moment. So when you're in the heights tab, if I right click edit and I come over here to the heights, what I like to think about, let me view it from the side. I start here on the bottom and I work my way up. So the bottom height is a selected contour, which we selected in here. You can't see it because it's in the part. And then the top height is this blue line, the light blue line. And you see here where it says top height, where my cursor is, it's referencing this. So it's an incremental distance from here to there. So you can see if I change that smaller, if I change this to 0.1, the lines move. And then this feed height here, you can even come in here, you can disable that. But by default it's on. So let's do top height. So if you ever forget the order of the way these need to be set, this references that references this feed height. So you can do here, you can do feed height and then retract height. So this retract height is looking at this value. This feed height is looking at this one. This top height is looking at this. And then this bottom is actually where my tool is going. Hopefully that kind of explains it. Again, Ron, there's many ways to do things, and I don't want to run out of time, but that's basically what I do. I start at the bottom and I work my way up. And then the top, so this one refers to this top height. This retract height is from the feed height, which is this. And you can see with each one, there's an incremental offset. So this one, you can even make these all 0. So it's just retracting to there. Hope that helps, Ron. Okay, so now we've got our part basically machined. Now we need to deburr some deburr some edges so it's not sharp. We're going to come in here under 2D. I'll do 2D chamfer. And I'm going to select a tool. And I had earlier what I was using, a 1/4-inch chamfer mill. I'll hit OK. Got my tool selected. I'm not going to worry about speeds and feeds. That's for another live stream. Geometry, what am I cutting? So I can click this one, this one. I like to do things kind of like this. So I've got those 5 edges chained and selected. On the heights, I'm gonna not worry. I'm gonna leave it all default. But under passes, here we need to define, if I hover my mouse, what's the width of the chamfer that I'm cutting? So on our model, we did not model the chamfer. It's a sharp edge. But I can say I want a nice small, let's do 15,000ths of an inch chamfer break, and my tip offset, if I hover my mouse, that is how far the tool is going to go past the selected edge. And I'm going to give it something like 80,000ths of an inch. And then chamfer clearance, that's for the wall of the shank or the shaft of the tool to stay away from vertical walls, for if you've got an instance like that where it's an open pocket. But we don't have that in this case. We do have this counterbore hole, but I'm not worried about collision because I'm controlling it. I'm telling the tool to go deeper, which will bring the outer edge of the tool away from the wall. You'll see what I'm talking about. And linking, I'm not going to worry about. I'll just hit OK. So we've got all those edges deburred. That looks good. Let me now right click here and simulate, see what the part looks like, and I will turn off the part itself, and that is here. And let's play that. So we haven't probed yet, but I just had an idea, and one thing I'm going to show you guys. That looks good. So you can see we've got a nice chamfered edge. Those the part is actually nice and smooth. That's just the graphic representation, but we do have a nice chamfer there. So one thing we can do from here to carry the stock over to the next operation, we can right click and say stock and come over to here and say save stock. And what that does, it will save it on your computer. I'm just going to save it under my downloads. There already is one there because I was doing this earlier. I saved my stock, so I'm going to replace it with this current one. And that's we're going to need that on the second op. So let me close this. And one thing, guys, we can do, let me minimize, do some housekeeping here, clean that up. So this will be op 1. One thing we can do here, guys, is when you put your stock in, and if you don't have a stop, and you just eyeball that in, or maybe you draw a line with a Sharpie marker, or you scribe a line, you could eyeball your part. And in Fusion, you can tell it now to probe that to find that center. I'll show you how to do that here under Setup. You can go under Probe. We've got all these other new strategies here. We'll cover that in another live stream. I'll also be doing some I'll be posting videos on our channel on how to do that. Probe. We will do select our tool, and I've got my probe here. It's 6mm ruby stylus. I'll hit OK. And under geometry, you can select off the model or off the stock. So let me come back here and let me make visible. Let me make some things visible here for, where is my part? So there's my stock. So let me do a feed rate here of 50. Stock. Probe type. Why is it not? Why am I having an issue here? Huh. There it is. I guess I was not clicking in the right spot. Sometimes there's a delay when we've got these live streams. So when I click that top face, Fusion automatically determined that that's a rectangle. And I can click on this face here and just that face. For this example, I'll just do that. I could also hit the Z. Look at that. So I'll just hit that top center and set my Z. I can give it a nice round number here. Hit OK. And then I could drag this down here. I can drag that first in my setup. The first thing it's going to do is probe that. And then I'm going to check this out. I'm just going to duplicate this. And we'll call this Z. And here, I'm going to call this XY. And this is where I'm going to probe my XY. So I'll right-click and edit. Under geometry, instead of Z surface, I'm going to do rectangular boss. And because I have model selected here, because I do have the stock modeled. And if I do the stock, if I do stock here, that's when Fusion creates your stock automatically. But because I have a my stock is modeled, I was able to select the model. That's why it says modeled. So you could come off the actual physical part or the modeled stock that you created, and that was here in my tree, or in my browser, I should say. All right. Heights, I'm just going to use the default. It's going from the top surface down 118 thou, 3 millimeters. And settings, you can come into here if you wanted to override the driving work coordinate system. So I'm using G54. If you wanted to change it and use G55, after you probe, you would click this here. I'm just going to leave it how it is and hit OK. All right, so now we've got we're probing our Z and probing our XY. So if I just drop this part in here and I have it eyeballed and it's off a millimeter or 1/8 of an inch or whatnot, I can adjust it with the probe. But I see the approach is a little close. Let's do this. We can give it a grader. You see this? So the tool is coming way out here in this green line. And you can change that right here. You can even come way out, like 1 inch away. So now let me right click and I'm going to simulate. And you'll be able to see, let me generate. Yes. Let's let that adaptive finish generating. Now I'm going to right click and simulate. And now you'll see the probe will come down and hit the Z. And you'll probe the part here and set your G54. And you'll see there's a collision. And that's because the tool is actually colliding with the material. So that's what these collisions are. The probe is touching the stock. So don't worry about that. That's normal behavior. All right. Okay, so we got that operation done. Now we want to work on operation 2 when we flip it over. And that's the main thing that we wanted to talk about here in today's live stream. So let's turn these jaws on, and I'm going to hide. Don't need anything from there. Turn my part on. Okay, but what I need to do, I need to bring in my stock. Remember we made our stock from the previous up? So let's bring that in. So you can go into here. It's not up there. I need to be in the design workspace. There it is. So under insert, you can insert mesh. And if we look in my downloads where I just saved that, there's my stock. I'm going to open that, and it will bring it in. We need to verify and make sure that's under millimeter. I'll have to talk to the Fusion guys and see Why that is, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Aaron or Brad might have an answer to that. But make sure that you bring it into millimeter so it's the right size and not huge. Okay. I'll hit OK. And that's going to be dropped in right here. So there's our stock, and there it is. This was from the previous one that I can delete that. When I was going through this earlier. Okay. So now we've got our stock. Let me come into here under manufacture. So our operation 2. So you're probably wondering why this is now upside down. And when we define and we draw our assembly, we want to keep the part and the stock exactly where it lives in space. And then our Z for op 2 will be in one orientation, and then actually that's for op 1, and then the Z for op 2 will be in this orientation, and then we just simply hide what we don't need. And the reason why we do that is when I created that stock, that mesh, the stock is in the right spot, and I don't have to worry about bringing that into the right location. So this is common workflow. Again, not the only workflow, but a common workflow. All right, guys, so now we need to define our op2 setup. That's over here. Click setup, and again, Fusion detects all of those bodies and creates stock around it. One way to get around that really quick is just come into here under model and say that's what I'm cutting. And then here for stock, like we did in op 1, I'm going to do from solid and come into here in our browser and find that mesh body. So there's our stock. So now what we need to do, we need to do our orientation of our WCS. Our Z is here, and then X will be here. And then you can do stock box point, model box point. I'm just going to leave it where it is for now. And again, our body was there. Under post process, we can give it a program number. And we can give it a comment, op2, live stream. This could be G54 again, if we're doing it on the same machine, or you can do G55. It's number 2. So now we've got our setup with our stock defined and the WCS defined. Again, I could have picked something down here, but we're going to be probing the part anyway. So I'm going to do facing operation just to get that top material. I could do an adaptive to clear around that top ledge of material, but in this case, I'm not going to worry about it. Come into here, and remember we had that 3-inch diameter face mill. I'll hit OK there, and then Fusion determines the outer boundary of the stock that we defined in the setup. And under heights, it starts at the stock top and it's going to the model top, which is correct. By default, that all works perfectly. And under passes, I'm going to give it multiple depths. I'm going to say, yep, that looks good. Maximum step down, 100 thou. And then finishing step, 20 thou. Let's do something smaller, 5 thousandths. And then the finishing feed rate, you can also adjust that here. So now we can simulate this and see what that looks like. I could right click here and simulate. And I can play that. So see, we're removing that material. That looks awesome. Okay, so then now, when we did that, we've exposed that hole. So now what we can do, we can come here under setup, and we could probe. And Fusion remembers our probe from when we selected it earlier. Under geometry, what are you going to measure? I'm just going to probe this surface. And it automatically determines the probe type, XY circular hole with an island. There's no island, in the middle of that hole that the probe needs to clear. So I'm going to hit just a circular bore. The approach, we can make that smaller. Heights, I'll leave it as default. It's basically the radius of the stylus, 3 millimeters beyond the top of that edge. Settings you can override if you needed to, but I do want to set my G55 to be updated. And the reason, again, why I'm doing this, like I said earlier, at the top of the hour when we started the live stream, if you have a feature and this is machined in one operation and then you flip it over, you wanted this to be referenced and you want it to be perfect, or in the case of the part that we have on the screen now, we want it to be all concentric, so the bore on the top and the bore on the bottom to be concentric. So that's why we're probing this. So we probe that feature there and hit OK. Now, if I right click and simulate, we'll machine the face of the stock. It's going to expose that hole. The probe will go down inside and measure the bore. And again, I've got these collisions, fusions, detecting that my tool, which is my spindle probe, made contact with the part. So anytime that happens, you get these collisions. So don't worry about that notification. That is as expected behavior in this case. So you remember we did these bores on the first op. It was that and that. So I can simply just right click. I could copy that and I could paste it into this setup here. And let me name this setup while I'm here. Let's go op 2, operation 2. So here I'll go into edit and I'll select new geometry and then my heights. Those are all good. I'll leave everything as is. And under model bottom, actually I don't need to hit that bore. I selected the wrong geometry. I'm going to do selected contour and come back to here. Because that bore, if you remember, that's already done from the opposite side. I just need to focus on this counter bore here. That and that. And hit OK. So now the tool will enter and machine that counter bore after probing, so we know it's all in line. We could even do, I was going to turn component coloring back on so you can see it, but then I'll have to jump back over. Yeah, I'd have to jump back over to the design workspace. I'll leave it as is. And then, so there's that. Next thing we need to do is just chamfer the edges. So I'm going to copy the one from the previous operation. I'll do a copy and then paste. And that's down here now. And I will reselect edges here. Quite simple. Click the outer edge, these edges here, and get in there nicely. There we go. We're running out of time here, but we're just about done. So now we can simulate this again with the edges. Let me hide the part. There we go. Face it, expose the hole, probe that bore, update the offset, machine those counter bores, chamfer and deburr the edges, and obviously we would post, but we're running out of time here. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today, guys. Just show you a little workflow on how to, one method to use this setup, probing in your setup. We'll be doing more here with probe geometry, and then maybe somewhere down the road some of these import results over here. But that's about all I have for today. Let me take a quick look, guys, at the comments. Let's see here. Since Brad's cutting board, Ayala. Oh, hey, Ayala Shell. I saw an email. A little behind on all my emails. I'll get to your email. My email, everyone, is angelo.juris@autodesk.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Angelo Juris. Actually, it's the true Croatian sensation. There's an underscore between each one. That's my heritage. My family's from Croatia. That's why I selected that name. There's a story behind that. I can share that another day. Don't forget to check out Fusion Academy, August 5th, 6th, and 7th. If you like this, want to see more, let us know. We liked hearing the comments and replying to everybody and engaging with the community. Take one last look at the comments. Oh yeah, it looks like Aaron put the link to my Instagram in there. Ekrem Talk. I hope I pronounced that right. Ice creams. Thumbs up to you guys. Everybody, Ron, all the usual people that join us, we value you guys. We value your input. If there's anything you want to see, something that we're missing, we want to bring value to you guys and keep bringing you some content so you guys can be effective and productive in Fusion. Thanks, Aaron, for being back there behind the scenes. And Brad, hope Jason's on too. I wasn't monitoring the comments fully, so I don't know who's all watching, but I'll go back and check them out. I appreciate all you guys, all the help that I get from Brad, Aaron, and Jason. You guys have a good day. Enjoy your Tuesday. It's 1 o'clock here on the West Coast. We've got the rest of our day, and then we've got a short work week. Everybody be safe, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.